We, the jury, duly impaneled and sworn to try the above entitled action, do make the following finding regarding the defendant, Nikki Sue Melissa Entzel. Conspiracy to commit murder. As to the charge of conspiracy to commit murder, we find the defendant, Nikki Sue Melissa Entzel, guilty. Conspiracy to commit arson. As to the charge of conspiracy to commit arson, we find the defendant, Nikki Sue Melissa Entzel, guilty. Conspiracy to tamper with physical evidence. As to the charge of conspiracy to tamper with physical evidence, we find the defendant, Nikki Sue Melissa Entzel, guilty.
I always look at defendants during the verdict, especially during the guilty verdicts, just to see if, like, all right, because I never want anyone who's not guilty or actually innocent to be convicted. And I was looking at her and I saw almost no reaction, like no shock, which is what I would expect from someone who actually committed the crime. Let me bring in Court TV legal correspondent Julia Jenae, joining us live tonight from Bismarck, North Dakota. Great to see you, Julia. A big day, quick verdict for that jury today. What did you see inside that courtroom?
Vinny, this verdict came down so quick, within 2 hours, that there were key family members who weren't able to make it back inside of the courtroom in time to hear that verdict. One loved one told us that she believed the jury was going to wait, come back tomorrow, but was trying to get back to the courtroom when we got the word that this verdict would come down. You said it there. The defendant looking almost disconnected. No reaction from her when the reading of this verdict came in. And even as she was led away out of the courtroom, this after her defense attorney and her defense team did not put on any evidence in front of this jury. Their choice was just to give them a closing argument, one that said that Earl Howard was not there, and that was enough for reasonable doubt. Certainly was not for this jury. Lori Krause, the sister of Chad Entzel, someone who testified in front of this jury. She was there every day inside of the courtroom. She was one of those family members trying to get back. We do have a shot of the family that was there hugging after this verdict. There in the front is the ex-wife of the victim. And you see that emotion, those tears. They've waited so long for this. But we did catch up with Lori after the fact, after she learned about the verdict. Take a listen.
We had really great evidence for the case. Everybody put forth so much effort in making sure justice was served for my brother. Glad to see some of the truth finally came out in the end. Really hard to listen to some of the defense talk about the lies that she needed to let everybody know, but honestly, it's bittersweet in the end that my brother can't be here, but we got the best possible outcome that we could without him being here. So I feel so grateful that we had a great friends and family that gathered with us every single day, and a great legal team that did put forth every ounce of energy to make sure this case was successful for the family. So
she mentioned there's some of those lies that she said were told by the defendant through her own statements to police about him being abusive and showing bruises to people. But I think the jury, with this verdict, really vindicating all of those false statements, according to the family.
Absolutely. And, you know, as I watch the family outside and I listen to your interview, it brings back the importance and the significance of these cases, right? He's not coming back, right? He's not coming back. But for the family, if it was the opposite, if this jury came back and said not guilty, the gut punch that is to the victim's family is almost inexplicable, because I've seen it and experienced it many times. So for them, it's not closure, but it's a turning of the page, I guess, to a certain extent. Julia, I understand you're able to speak to some of the other folks involved in the case today after the verdict.
All right, we were able to catch up with the prosecutor who handled this from beginning to end. She brought in 45 witnesses. Julie Ann Lawyer, the state attorney here in Burleigh County, North Dakota. Julie Ann Lawyer told us that this was one that was really heavily based in this great investigative work, everything that was happening behind the scenes. And she laid it out in a nearly hour-long closing argument for this jury, where she weaved together The surveillance video, the hotel card swipes, the purchases that were made and found on credit cards, and really gave this jury a clear timeline of how this conspiracy to commit murder, arson, and tampering with evidence happened. But we asked her what happened to Earl Howard, the boyfriend who pleaded guilty before all of this happened, who we thought might come in. Take a listen to her answer.
We always add a co-defendant when they plead guilty because they're a potential witness, and we always disclose any potential witness that may testify. In this case, given the amount of evidence that we had and the fact that there was a murder charge lodged against Mr. Howard at the beginning, but we didn't have any supporting evidence to conclude conclusively that he was the person that pulled the trigger, and so we don't actually know who was the one that pulled the trigger, and there is that uncharged murder count that's out there, so he still has the right to remain silent regarding that. He still has the right to not testify regarding that, and I didn't want to pull him back in from the DOCR to have him plead the fifth or not testify, and with all the evidence that we had, I didn't find it necessary to call him.
So there's the answer on why we didn't hear from Earl Howard. His murder charge was dismissed by the court because they couldn't prove it, but it sounds like if they had the evidence, they could bring him back into court for that charge. I also asked the ex-wife of the victim, Suzanne Entzel, whether she wanted to hear from Earl Howard. She said really she didn't want to hear what he had to say, wouldn't have wanted him to take the stand because he, along with Nikki Entzel, would have just said more lies. She had this to say about why it was important for her as a former partner of the victim in this case to make sure that she spoke up on his behalf.
There was stuff going around online that Nikki was saying a bunch of stuff that wasn't true, and I didn't think that was fair, and I wanted to make sure that everybody knew what type of person Chad was, and he wasn't the alcoholic, he wasn't the abusive person. He just liked to hang out with his friends and golf and bowl and race and do things that people enjoy to, like to do, and he wasn't the abusive, and I didn't think that was fair that she was saying all this stuff about him.
We often see that through the prosecution of cases that the victim's name will get dragged through the mud. In this case, there was witness after witness who came in to refute that, and really nothing from the defense to say that any of those claims about Chad Entzel were the truth. So really just a strong family. They were here for all 7 days of this trial, and now breathing a sigh of relief. You could feel that outside of the courthouse.
Yes, because regardless of what you think about a case, you never really know what a jury is going to do in the way they saw the evidence and the burden of proof, etc. Let's talk about sentencing for Nikki Entzel. What is the range of time that she is now facing?
Well, it's coming in about 60 days. I asked the prosecutor if it was a range, and she said it's not a range, but it's completely up to the discretion of the judge. It can go anywhere from 0 years to life in prison without parole, and that's for that top charge of conspiracy to commit murder. It carries the same kind of sentence that you would get if she had been convicted of murder. She's convicted of conspiracy, so same sentence guidelines essentially in that regard, but the victims will likely be taking the stand. The victim's family will be giving their impact statements during that sentencing. The defense may be putting on people who can speak on behalf of Nikki Entzel, something we didn't see during the trial, but there's a lot of wiggle room. We know her co-defendant is serving 25 years, but he's someone who pleaded guilty, and we got the sense from the prosecutor that Nikki Entzel and her attorney never approached them about wanting a plea.
That's fascinating. I mean, that much discretion, 0 to life without parole. A lot at stake in that hearing for that judge. Wow. Julia Jenae in Bismarck, North Dakota tonight, verdict night. Thank you so much, Julia. Let's bring in our think tank. Join us tonight, Atlanta, Georgia, criminal defense attorney, former federal prosecutor, law professor at Texas Southern University, Michael Sterling is with us. In Seattle, Washington, trial attorney, and someone I've been to a lot of trials with, Ann Bremner, and in West Palm Beach, Florida, former police lieutenant, now trial attorney, Rick King. Great to see everyone tonight. And Michael Sterling, let me start with you because I introduced you as a criminal defense attorney. So I'm putting you on the spot here. No opening statement, no evidence, and a 10-minute closing argument in a conspiracy to commit murder trial where the potential of life without parole. what was that? Can you explain to me, like, where that comes from? Like, and it's not like, you know, I'm not a criminal defense attorney, but like, I saw possibilities of attacking the prosecution's case here that we normally see. Not that I believe in any of it, but that we normally see. So what happened here, Michael? No open, no evidence, and a 10-minute closing argument.
Vinny, I mean, I'll be honest with you. You know, I'm hesitant to attack another attorney's trial strategy. I really am.
Are they saving it for sentencing?
I don't know what they're saving anything for, because that's the ball game, right? The trial is the ball game. You do, criminal defense attorneys, I'm a strong believer in the idea that when you're hired or when you're retained or even when you're appointed to represent a criminal defendant in a case, the accused in a case, you have an ethical responsibility to do everything you can do. Criminal defense attorneys have a different ethical responsibility than prosecutors. You have an ethical responsibility to do everything you can do. Vinny, I've had a case recently tried on camera. My client alleged to have been shooting somebody 9 times. It's caught on camera. I put on a full defense. Jury deliberated for 9.5 hours, longer than the OJ juror. And because I did everything I could do in my power to say, look, I know that you see this, but also there's the intent element. Let's talk about that and my client's mens rea. And so, because you just have to do what you have to do as a lawyer, as a defense attorney, you have an ethical responsibility to represent your client. That's what gives them a full and fair trial. That's what makes our system work, that you have a defense attorney who represents your constitutional rights, who walks the jury through the elements. So I'm not sure what this defense attorney was thinking. I don't typically question defense attorneys' trial strategies, but it seems extremely and extraordinarily lazy to me.
Yeah, I don't know what it was, and maybe there's, what we did hear from Julia Jenae, though, the judge has a lot of discretion. It's 0, you know, like probation, all the way to life without parole. So is it really about the sentencing? Because, hey, she actually did it?
Right. Yeah, I mean, I love that Vinny saved it for sentencing, but that might apply here. I mean, there was really not a lot that could be done. I agree with Michael Sterling in terms of how deficient this was, but maybe he's saving it with that kind of discretion on a murder case, that he can put everything before the judge on that. I agree with you. Looking at her when the verdict came in, she was just nonplussed. I mean, it was just, right? Like, she's like, got it, I know it, I did it. But I guess with that kind of discretion, we'll see, maybe he's going to be masterful at sentencing, right?
Yeah. Well, Rick, what are your thoughts? And, you know, and the cross-examination was not super intense either, Rick. I mean, there was no opening statement, so we're like, all right, he's saving it for his case, and then it never happened. And then, all right, so he's got a case, but there was no evidence. All right, it's the closing argument. And then it was like 10 minutes. And I know, I've covered cases all around the country, and there's a different pacing in different parts of the country. Still felt a little thin at 10 minutes for a case involving conspiracy to commit the murder of the man you loved.
Let me start out by saying this. I totally agree with Michael in that I am loath to criticize the trial strategy of another lawyer. I don't want to do that. But what I will say is 10 minutes is a little thin for this type of trial. I don't know what he was doing or whether he's saving it for sentencing or maybe he phoned it in. I don't know. But as a defense lawyer, and you know, this was said by both Anna and Michael, that, you know, you take an you're obligated to be a zealous advocate for your client. And so you have to, you can't hold it back. You got to leave everything you have in the well of that court. especially when a case like this, you got to leave it out there, and it didn't appear to me as though that's what happened. And again, maybe you and Michael both have it right, and he's saving it for sentencing because they felt as though the evidence was overwhelming, and they had no way to go, and maybe because of the amount of discretion the judges had, they're going to put on something at sentencing that's going to sway the discretion of the judge. But for me, even those cases where it's not, you don't have it, you still got to go with it, and you still got to put on the case, and you got to go.
You had somebody else, Vinny, accused of pulling the trigger that the prosecution later on leaked.
Yes.
I mean, you got some. I mean, I know that when evidence can be overwhelming. Like I said, I just got through trying a case with my guys on camera. You gotta do what you gotta do sometimes. Earl Howard they prosecuted, they charged him.
He's there.
There was
do what you
definitely
have to do.
There was a place to point the finger, like literally he pleaded guilty. All right.